Yeah, Brezhnev was pretty much of a ladies' man. I mean, he was always kind of bragging about that. He had a sort of a macho attitude and so forth. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Nixon did not particularly appreciate that aspect of him. I mean, not that she's prudish about it, but he made one crack at an airport. I recall when we went down the line, and there were a lot of several pretty girls who were there with flowers and so forth, welcoming us. This is in Russia. And he turned to me with a little wink, and he said, "Would you want to take one of these with you?" And she didn't appreciate that, and I understand it well. But as far as Brezhnev is concerned, I remember at Camp David, we had a little incident there which indicated that he had pretty good taste insofar as his ladies were concerned. I went over to pick him up. He was staying at one of the guest cottages called Dogwood to bring him over to dinner. And he, big, I'd say big, she was a very handsome, full-bosomed Russian girl, came out, and I shook hands with her. I was introduced to her, and his aide said it was his masseuse. And then I happened to put my hand up to my nose, and she was wearing arpège, which is one of my wife's favorite French perfumes, a very expensive one. So he had good taste.
Do your intelligence briefings tell you, or does the gossip that you get from the NSC or the State Department tell you whether a leader with whom you're negotiating plays around with women?
Oh, yes.
Do you take that, does that have any practical other than gossip interest? Because everybody's interested.
No, you've got to know what people are interested in. I must say, I don't go so far as to say that when you know that you provide consorts for them when they come, although that has been known to happen in some countries. And it's also been known that some of the leaders, when they go to these countries, they ask for that. I remember Bourguiba, the president of the country of Tunisia, was speaking about Sukarno, the president of Indonesia, coming to Tunisia, and speaking very deprecatingly of him. He said, here's this man coming to my country, and we had a lot of important things to talk about. And you know what? The first thing he said when we met, he wanted une femme, a girl. Well, so they furnished a girl.
There's a story that the usually unflappable Harold Macmillan was flapped when John Kennedy on one of their meetings told him that unless he had sex 3 times a day, he got a headache.
Well, he can take extra Tylenol for that.
After this poolside party, you gave a very small dinner for Brezhnev in your dining room. What was that like?
Very emotional affair. At the dinner, now he's a Russian again. When we'd met earlier, he was a communist, speaking about the Chinese, but he was a Russian. I proposed a toast at the end of the dinner, pointing out that this house was relatively small, but it was ours. The dining room seated only 10 people. And in short, that I hoped that what we did would help to bring peace for our children, for his children, and for our grandchildren, and for the children of the world. Well, he was very moved by that, and he got up out of his chair, and there were tears were coming down his cheeks, and he gave me a bear hug, had a very responsive toast in which he endorsed that proposition. He wanted to feel, in a way, that what he did, even though he still had uppermost the idea of extending communist domination in the world, preferably without war, but he wanted to have the feeling that what he did contributed to a better world for children and grandchildren. And so in that respect, he was very much. And then after that, after dinner, he wanted to see Mrs. Nixon and me alone. And he took us aside, and he had a little box with him, about this big, and he took out a scarf, a beautiful scarf. He said it had been made by artisans in his home village. And he said every stitch in this scarf represents affection from the people of Russia for the people of the United States, and from Mrs. Brezhnev and me to you and to Mrs. Nixon. So there's the Russian speaking. Now, he wasn't giving us that little scarf because he thought that might have an effect in softening me up for negotiations about China and so on and so forth. He was giving it because there was a warmth about the man at times. So as I say, as communists, I must say I could not have been more opposed to him. As a Russian, I could not help but like him as a Russian, as a person.